Think about it. In most big events, it's the little things that can make or break them. In 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger was lost due to a cheap O-ring that probably cost less than a few dollars. 7 lives and hundreds of millions of dollars were lost because of this. Consider, it is often mentioned that a blood clot, sometimes so small that you need a microscope to see it, can kill someone. Blood flow to a critical part of the brain is blocked, and a life is lost due to a microscopic piece of sticky cells. Be aware that a small patch of ice on the road can cause your vehicle to spin out of control and crash. The wheel spins, you lose control on a sharp turn, and this can lead to death. This list goes on and on. Some little thing, often even unnoticed, can destroy a major undertaking. But think about it. Can we call marriage an important endeavor? I think so. I consider my marriage an important endeavor. I've been married for just over 8 years to a beautiful woman named April. We have 2 wonderful boys, Chris and Charles. Chris is my namesake. Charles was named after my father. We live in a nice house with enough space for a growing family. I didn't graduate from college, but I have a good job as a mechanic. My talents and skills have provided us with a good life. I work long hours, but for the money I get, it's worth it. I have always considered my marriage to be the high point of my life. I worked hard to feed my family. I considered this an important undertaking and took it seriously. The things that destroyed my marriage were small things. In my case, it was a small blood vessel in my brain that was too close to another vessel, and at some point, the vessel swelled and touched the other. The result was a migraine headache. I had one such moment on that fateful day. The symptoms were as usual. The light was painful, the sounds were increasing, and the smells were terrible. It hit me suddenly and without warning, just a blinding pain that took me by surprise. I immediately realized what it was. The problem was that I didn't have my Imitrex inhaler with me, so I had no way to stop or alleviate the pain. The pills I carried with me were not as effective as the inhaler and would take time to reduce the pain to an acceptable level. I couldn't work with such pain. I staggered into my boss's office and told him the bad news. He panicked at my concern, called his secretary Penny and told her, "Take him home. Damn it, and don't let him drive, for God's sake. Go, now!" Penny helped me up, and she and my boss carefully led me out the door and down the hallway toward the exit. Penny led me outside and helped me lean my back against the wall as she walked to her car. I couldn't stand the light, so I kept my eyes closed and my hands to my temples, pressing them as hard as I could to numb the pain. Once in the car, I leaned back in the seat and tried to tune out everything. The pain was severe and getting worse. I was almost blind. The light forced me to close my eyes tightly. The sounds were now just an unbearable buzz in my head, and the smell was disgusting, causing my stomach to rebel. Since Penny knew where I lived, I didn't have to say or do anything while she was driving. It seemed to take forever, but eventually she stopped the car, walked around, opened my door, and pulled me out. I walked, following where she led. It was all I could do. Penny led me inside and helped me to the kitchen, where I told her to open the refrigerator and get out her inhaler. She found it, put it in my hand, and held it while I inserted it into my nose and pressed the plunger. I inhaled at the same time, taking the aerosol into my lungs, and from there, it quickly entered the bloodstream. I asked her to take me to the living room next to the kitchen and help me lie down on the sofa. I asked her to close all the blinds and turn off all the lights. She did so, waited a few minutes until I told her that I could already feel the beginnings of relief, and she left. I thanked her for driving me home and welcomed the silence as she left. I must have fallen asleep quickly once the pain began to subside, because sometime later I woke up to voices. The room was very dark, so I knew it was later in the day. When I remembered where I was, I immediately noticed that the pain had disappeared. I felt like I had been beaten, but that was just a remnant of a migraine. I sat up slowly and waited a couple of heartbeats to make sure the pain wasn't just lurking, waiting to get to me. She disappeared. God bless. I sat there in the dark, recognizing the voices of my wife April and her friend Robin from next door. I think they didn't know I was there since it was dark and the lights were still off. Maybe April just let me sleep in, suspecting that I might have come home early, But no, my car wasn't in the driveway. She probably didn't even know I was here. Maybe I would just surprise them both. I stood up, ready to tiptoe to the door and then jump out when I began to pay attention to their words. "Come on, April, how was it? Was it as good as before? Tell me the details, girl." It was fantastic. I felt like I was in heaven. This time, it was even better than before. I swear. God, it was almost mind-blowing. It was the best sex I've ever had. Even better than with Chris, better than with your husband. Hell yes. I love Chris to death, but he never made me feel that way. Never. Of course, I never allowed him to do such things to me. He would think I was a real slut if I did that. But then Carl must think you're a slut. Of course, but I'm his slut. And I like it. God, I can't wait for next time. Aren't you afraid that Chris will find out? What would he do? Have you thought about this? You're risking a lot, you know. Chris will never know. And even if he did, so what? He won't do anything about it. He's nice, and he would forgive me. He would never divorce me and risk losing his children. He loves these children and knows that I will take them away from him in a heartbeat. All I would need is a ruthless lawyer and he would be fired. That's not like you, April. I've never heard you talk about Chris like that. How can you say you love him when you say that? You're scaring me, girl. I think you're making a huge mistake. I really want to warn you. I love Chris. I really love him, but I don't want to end what I have with Carl either. I want both. I want the sex I get with Carl and the love I get with Chris. I need both, and I won't give it up. I've heard enough. My migraine went away, but the pain in my heart was much worse. The pain was so intense that my stomach clenched and my breath took away. I heard a ringing in my ears, and the blood began pounding in my head. I was afraid I was going to have a heart attack and held onto the door frame until I felt my body begin to return to some degree of normalcy. I still didn't let them know I was there, but as my control returned, the anger inside me increased until I felt like I was ready to explode. I straightened up, raised my head, and walked out into the light of the kitchen. There was a sudden silence when Robin saw me first. She looked up and paused, her eyes widening and her mouth opening in a shocked, "Oh!" Her hand flew to her mouth, and she quietly exhaled. "My God!" April turned to see what she was looking at and saw me standing there. Her face turned from satisfaction to surprise, to fear, and then to anger. And all this in the blink of an eye. She pushed back her chair and stood up, turning to face me. "How much have you heard? Why the hell were you hiding there and spying on me?" I just looked at her silently. My gaze moved to Robin, who immediately stood up and said, "I have to go. Pete and I will keep the boys if you don't come get them. I'll call you later." With these words, she almost ran out the side door. I watched her leave without saying a word. As soon as she left, I looked back at April, thinking that this was the woman I had loved unconditionally for the last 8 years of my life. 8 years that were the happiest of my life. I expected that we would be together for the rest of our lives, but now that expectation has been shattered. There will be no eternity for us. We won't grow old together. April killed it tonight. "Where are the boys? Where were you doing while you were having fun with your lover? Did you care about them, or did you have too much fun having sex with another man and leaving them unattended?" Now I am calm and cool. The pain was still there, a deep, cutting pain. It would take a long time for this pain to subside. April had a look of anger on her face that turned her beauty into an ugly mask. Maybe the mask was the real April. Maybe it was April, who I never saw, but who was inside all along. She whipped back. "The boys are with Carly. Robin and I went shopping and Pete looked after them. And I wasn't with anyone else, just Robin." By making this statement, she felt like she had scored a point. The expression of anger was replaced by an expression of satisfaction. Finally, she realized that I had been at home all this time and asked, "What are you doing at home? Where is your car and why were you sitting there in the dark? Have you been spying on me? Tried to catch me doing something?" I returned home early with a severe migraine. George asked Penny to take me home because I couldn't stand the light. I took my Imitrex and fell asleep. I've been home since then. I felt a quiver in my stomach, and an unmistakable urge to vomit overcame me. I stood up and continued on my way, heading to the bathroom. Your voices woke me up, and what I heard made me sick. I need to go to the bathroom, so... With these words, I ran to the bathroom and tried to spit out my stomach through my mouth. It wasn't successful, but my body definitely tried. I sat on the bathroom floor, my face pressed against the cool porcelain as my body slowly relaxed. My stomach finally stopped rebelling and my breathing returned to normal. The sweat dried on my face as the urge to vomit dissipated. I sat there for a few more minutes before getting up, splashing some water on my face and rinsing my mouth. Once the shaking stopped and I felt a little more in control, I returned to the kitchen where April was sitting staring out the window. I'm going to pick up the boys. I'll put them to bed tonight. I walked past her and out the door, heading next door to the Andersons. Pete and Robin Anderson were our neighbors and best friends. We spent many evenings at each other's houses, talking and sharing drinks. Yes, best friends, damn it, I thought bitterly. I wondered what Pete knew. I should have asked. I walked up the steps to their back door, knocked a couple of times and entered. Robin sat in her kitchen with a cup of coffee in front of her and talked to her husband. I think she told him. He looked up as I entered, with a look of pity on his face. Robin just looked scared. I came to pick up the boys. Are they ready to go home? I had already walked past Pete into the living room, where I assumed the boys were playing with Carly, their teenage daughter. I saw them working on a puzzle together while Carly watched them. She smiled at me as I entered the room and stood up. Hello, Mr. Phillips. Have you come for them? When I nodded, she said, I'll get their jackets. I stood watching them, and a feeling of sadness overwhelmed me. Scenes like this were victims of infidelity, as I imagined. All the little everyday joys that existed in the family were forever changed, crushed by the incomprehensible selfishness of adults. In most cases, their lives will be destroyed beyond repair. This seemed to be one of those times. Thank you, Carly. I'll be in the kitchen when they're ready. I walked back into the kitchen where Petey and Robin were still sitting. I looked at Robin and then at Petey. Did you both know? Did you know she cheated on me, Pete? Was it encouraging to know that you knew when we were together? Did it give you any kind of painful thrill? I was angry and my words were unnecessarily harsh, but I wanted to know. I wanted to know what my dear friends knew. I should have known. Pete looked at Robin, anger clear on his face, before answering me. I didn't know anything, buddy. I swear to you, if I had known, I would have told you right away. I can't believe my wife knew and hid this from me. It was really low. Damn low. You don't deserve this. I won't apologize to my wife, but if you need me, I'm here. Pete glared at his wife with a look of anger on his face. I believed him. He would have told me if he knew. So that was Robin and April's secret. Then I must thank you, Robin. Thank you for letting me become a laughingstock, a cuckold, a weakling who didn't need to know his wife was having fun with another guy. I hope this makes you feel good knowing what you knew was thinking about me when she told you the details. I turned around when I saw Carly out of the corner of my eye. I quickly put a smile on my face as the boys walked out, each with a cookie in their hand. I prayed that she hadn't heard my last comments, but judging by the look on her face, that wasn't the case. This would be the last time Robin would be with my boys. I will make this my goal. I didn't know how to do it, but I would try. We entered the house through the back door where the boys ran upstairs to their room to get dressed for dinner. I walked through the empty kitchen into the living room where April was sitting. She kept the light on, sitting in the dark, as did I, as I listened to the end of my life. I walked in, turned on the light on the table next to the sofa, and opened the curtains to let in the fading daylight. All I could see was a room filled with shadows, dark corners symbolizing the hidden secrets that my loving wife kept. April looked terrible. Her eyes were red, still shiny from crying. Her face was pale and drawn, her shoulders hunched. All the anger and belligerence had flown away, and she was now the scared woman I expected. However, it was a little late for that, And instead of giving me hope, I felt disgusted. Was she remorseful now? Now she's scared? I couldn't accept such a big change in just 10 minutes. No, this was the first salvo in the battle for supremacy. This was an unfaithful wife who kept secrets and hid her infidelity from me. This face expressed deception and cunning, not regret. I looked at her and asked the first question that came to mind. Who is he? What does he have that I don't? She just looked at me without answering until I was sure she wasn't going to say anything. I was about to turn to leave when she finally spoke. Who he is doesn't matter, and it has nothing to do with you. Chris, I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I never wanted you to find out. I never meant to hurt. You like this. I'm so sorry you heard what I said to Robin. You have to understand. You must. It's funny. There was no, I'm sorry I did that. It wasn't, I wish this never happened. It wasn't, this will never happen again. Just sorry I got caught and you had to figure it out. I shook my head, sinking into the soft, deep chair she had bought me for our 5th anniversary. I still loved it, but now it was just a chair. Please, you have to let me explain this to you. This doesn't have to be our end. We can continue in the same spirit as before. We can, if you just try to understand. You will do this? She looked at me with a pleading expression that I had seen before when she wanted something that I didn't agree with. Lying, bitch. Can you tell me it's over? Can you promise me that you will never see him or be with him again? You will do this? I kept my voice calm, my body tense, my hands gripping the arms of my chair, squeezing, keeping me under control. April looked at me with wide eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't answer me. That was enough for me. She won't stop. I heard her words to Robin. She wanted it both ways, and she wasn't going to let me stand in her way. She wasn't going to give up on him. She wanted me to agree. I think this is your answer. I'll put the boys to bed after dinner, and then we can discuss our options. Tomorrow, I will move my things out of the house. I think I'll stay with my brother at his house. I got up and left the room to go to the kitchen. It's funny how the kitchen becomes the place to go when things get really bad. I wonder why. A strange thought comes to mind when your world is falling apart. It's even weirder to realize that your world is falling apart. April got busy making dinner for us, and I took the boys to the playroom and spent an hour or so with them, just enjoying themselves. We were playing one of their games when April called us over for dinner. We moved with a lot of noise, and I pushed the boys towards the bathroom to wash their hands. Ordinary things, keeping yourself in check for their own sake. Dinner that night was a busy meal. The boys were as boisterous as usual, enjoying each other, the food on their plates, and life in general. Compared to their parents, who sat quietly, each in their own private world, thinking about the consequences and decisions that had to be made. Ah, the joy of growing up and leaving childhood behind. Why do children always want to grow up? They don't know much. They see the freedom that adults have and think that it is unlimited. They see that decisions must be made and see no consequences for making them. They see the independence of adults and associate it with the lack of rules. Adults know better. On the other hand, some don't. Some people see freedom as unlimited, without any consequences for their decisions and without respect for rules. Like April. After dinner, April washed the dishes and cleaned up the kitchen while I took the boys upstairs to bed. We talked and read a couple of stories for an hour until they finally stopped fighting and let me put them down. I walked to the door of their room, dimmed the lights, and watched as they pulled the covers up to their necks and prepared to enter dreamland, where possibilities were endless and new discoveries awaited. My eyes burned and my throat tightened with grief as I looked. This, too, had to end. Downstairs, I sat down in a chair and tried to find something to grab onto. My world seemed to be slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I loved April with all my heart, but I couldn't forget the words I heard as I stood there in the dark, listening. Those words, "He never made me feel this way," and "I'm his slut." No. There was no turning back from these words. I felt the love inside me die as I tried to consider all the possibilities. April came in and sat down. "We need to talk. I know you're upset, but you have to understand. What I have with Carl is just sex and the excitement of something new. I know it will pass quickly, but right now I can't stop seeing him. This is what excites me and I can't give it up. But this did not affect my feelings for you. I love you, not him. He's just a distraction, nothing more. This will end soon, and we can go back to the way we were. You just have to let it happen." The words flowed like a river, but I could not understand what she was saying. I can't refuse this? I can't stop seeing him? Should I let this continue? Was she crazy or just delusional? Either way, it had to stop. Now, I see you're the only one who doesn't seem to understand. There are no us. There is no we. There is only you and him. That's all there is now. It's all over between us. Finished. End. This is not negotiable, and I will never accept it. You should know this after being married to me for the last 8 years. You cannot know me enough to believe that I will agree to your affair. But Chris, I love you. You are the only man I have ever loved. I don't like Carl. Please try to understand. Give me this time. Please, baby. For the sake of our marriage and our family, give me this time. Take as much time as you want. Tomorrow I will contact the lawyer, and we will split everything equally. I have no desire to hurt you like you hurt me. I just want this to end. Now I was emotionally exhausted and just wanted to go to bed and forget for a while. My headache was a thing of the past. But the pain in my heart was real, and I just wanted to forget for a few hours. But I was not prepared for what came next. Then, damn you, no divorce. I will fight you every step of the way and take everything you have. I will make sure that you do not get custody of the boys, and I will limit your visitation rights in every way possible. If you don't give me what I want, it will cost you everything, and I'll still have Carl. You can't stop me. Know that. I listened to this speech, and then it dawned on me that this marriage had already ended a long time ago. This degree of anger and disrespect was not sudden. It was planned and well thought out. She never worried about hurting me. If that were the case, she would never have done it in the first place. She would have ended this before it even started. Instead, she anticipated that I would find out, and instead of ending her affair, she decided to hurt me as much as possible. There was no love here, only greed and the desire to humiliate me. I watched her as my anger grew. I know my face showed her that she had gone too far. Her expression, distorted by the venom in her words, changed from satisfied to fearful. Then my words came out. "I just want to tell you one thing, April. When you corner a rat, it attacks you. She will fight to the death when you try to deny her any chance of escape. You should have known that before you pushed me. But now you did it, and you will pay for it. Please, Chris, I don't want to do this, but I have no choice. I love you and will do everything in my power to keep you from leaving us. If you don't try to understand and accept this, I will fight you. You will have no choice but to give in and stay with me. I know you. You love me and the boys too much to leave. I know you, Chris. You will stay. Goodbye, April. Tell the boys I'll see them when I can. I'll just grab some things and then leave. I'll pick up the rest of my things later when we can agree on a time." I went upstairs and quickly packed a bag that would last me a day or so. Nothing special, just my things from the bathroom, a few pairs of underwear, jeans, and socks. Not much after 8 years of marriage. Now there are only bitter memories. But I had 2 wonderful sons, and that was all I cared about right now. I went downstairs and saw April sitting in the kitchen by the door. Apparently, she was going to try again. "Chris, please don't do this. I beg you. No need." "Tell me that you will break up with him. You will never see him again. Just tell me this, and maybe we'll have a chance." "I can't. I just cannot. Please." I pushed her aside. I felt the urge to hit her as hard as I could, but I knew the anger inside would not be so easy to control, so I restrained myself. "I'll come in the evenings after work so the boys won't notice anything right away." I opened the door and went out. The door slammed behind me as I threw my bag in the back seat and climbed into my truck. I reversed out of the garage and drove away. On the way, I took out my cell phone and called Clyde, my brother. He lived about 10 miles from here. He had been living alone since his wife ran away with his boyfriend 2 years ago, and Clyde had no idea where she was. He didn't care anymore, but he was too lazy to do anything about it. They never divorced, but Clyde didn't let that stop him. He was now a real drunk and used to drink with his friends almost every night. He and I talked about it, but Clyde didn't stop. I had to admit that he rarely got drunk. He was just high most of the time. I think he was burying memories. But that was just my opinion. He listened to me and told me to go to his house. He'll be back later. So I drove to his house, took the key from under the flower pot on the porch, and went inside. As always, everything looked perfect. Clyde was anything but a slob. In fact, he was compulsively neat. He's always been like this. It was comforting to see now. Everything was as it had always been. It was just my life that was ruined. I opened the refrigerator, found a few bottles of beer, and made myself comfortable, as he suggested. By the time he returned, I was pleasantly drunk. I went to the store for another beer and continued drinking. When he got home, I just told Clyde that April and I had a fight. To help me, he sat down and started drinking the rest of his beer, just to keep me from going too far. He told me that I was his brother and he would always be there for me. The next morning, I woke up with a bad hangover and a bad headache. It was my own fault that I drank like that. Even though I had a reason, it was no excuse. I staggered into the bathroom and stood in the shower, letting the cold water wash away the last of the alcohol in my blood. There's no point in staying drunk. I looked for Clyde and found a note saying he was at work and would report me. Not surprising, since we had to work that Saturday. Clyde and I worked at the same place for a company that rented heavy construction equipment to most of the major contractors. Customers came from all over the state to get their equipment, and we were two of the best mechanics. Our job was to keep the rigs running, no matter the problems. It was good money and long hours, but it paid what I expected to provide for my family. It was my job to provide. So I had to work. I knew I had to continue earning the money that April used to maintain that big house she was so proud of. I believed she saw it the same way I did. A home for us and safety for our family. I was proud of it, my way of providing, my way of honoring and cherishing my family. It wasn't like she told me last night. April thought about it differently. It was her safety, it was okay. But she also saw it as an advantage to keep me over her head in any divorce. She wanted the house and the money I made, but only to buy nice clothes for her lover, for trips to Victoria's Secret to buy lingerie for her lover. I increased the water supply to drown out these thoughts. Even though I was late, I needed to get out of here and go to work where I could think, plan, decide, things I couldn't do now, things April had already thought about. From what she said last night, it was clear that she had planned this in advance, knowing that I would be shocked by her betrayal as soon as I found out. She knew I wouldn't think clearly then, so she planned everything in advance. Amaze me with your divorce strategy, taking everything from me, do so as to hurt children. Make it seem like it was my fault if I didn't approve of my wife having fun with another man. Make me the bad guy. She stacked the deck correctly. She shoved it in my face to force me to let her have sex with another man. She considered herself smart. She had something good, and she wasn't about to lose it because of her jealous husband. I got dressed and grabbed a box of large trash bags. I knew she would leave this morning, take the boys to her mother. I drove up to the house and went inside. I took everything out of my closet and drawers and threw it into trash bags. I took out all the things I might need from the bathroom, put them in a small bag, and carried it and the bags to my truck. I threw everything in the back seat and returned to the house. I wasn't going to leave right now. I will return home after work and spend some time with the children. I had a lot to think about and a lot to decide. One thing was certain. My marriage was over, and I would never touch April again. Never again will she be my wife, my lover, or my confidant. Now she was someone else's lover, not mine. When I thought about it, I couldn't stop the tears from welling up, and I sat down on the floor of what used to be our bedroom and cried. Loss is hard. At work, I threw myself into my work and worked even during my lunch break. I was happy to bury all thoughts of home, wife, and children under the pressure of fuel injectors, timing chains, and fuel pumps. I dealt with broken drivetrains and hydraulic lifters, anything that challenged me. I've worked the toughest jobs, without complaint. I was like a man possessed, and was still doing it 10 hours later when Clyde tapped me on the shoulder to take a break. "Dude, come on! God, maybe you can take a break? You make us all look like lazy bastards." He stood there and waited for me to stop, with a stunned look on my face. "Sorry, little brother. Just working on burying myself in it. I just want to forget." Sorry. I must have looked like I was about to burst into tears when Clyde took me by the elbow and led me off the landing and into the seating area. Clyde and I have been close since our father and mother died in a car accident 10 years ago. Clyde was the best man at my wedding 8 years ago. Clyde was the godfather of my boys, Chris Jr. and Charlie. I sat down and stared at the table, while Clyde brought us both a cup of hot coffee. The coffee was tasteless, but hot. "Okay, talk to me. Tell me the whole story and don't leave anything out. Start talking." I started talking and didn't stop for the next 10 minutes. I told Clyde everything. All the shame, humiliation, contempt that April showed me, and I even told him about the threats she made. The ones she planned to use to keep me from doing anything that would ruin her sex fest. She tried to make it impossible for me to do anything to stop her or get back at her without giving up everything. She did it voluntarily, and now she wanted me to accept it. I told Clyde about the look on her face when she humiliated me when she told Robin about the sex and how wonderful it was. The contempt on her face when she threatened me that she would take everything from me. She made it clear that her lover was too important to her to give up. Clyde was shocked. He knew April well, always thought of her as a good woman and a good mother. His brother never hinted at any problems between them, and he assumed their marriage was strong. Now this has happened. Clyde looked at his brother and saw the pain and suffering he was experiencing. It was painful just to see it. Chris was a good man, a reliable father, a great provider, and through it all, someone the guys in the garage knew they could always trust to be there for them. Over the years, he has helped more than his fair share. Clyde started to get angry. How could she do this to him? What the hell is wrong with her? His anger began to rise as he looked at his brother and best friend, broken and beaten. "Chris, listen to me. You're not going to accept this, are you? You have to do something. Let me and the guys help you. It is unbearable." He looked at me with concern written all over his simple face. It was caring for me. I felt it. I looked up with a hopeless expression on my face. What can I do? She will take everything from me if I divorce her. Child support, support for her, house, car, everything. You know I would never take anything away from my children. She uses children as weapons against me. She knows I won't hurt them. And now the idiot with whom she is having fun will replace their father. He's a jerk who thinks it's okay to have sex with someone else's wife. I can't do anything. Clyde shook his head and growled. To hell with both of them. You know I loved April like a sister. But now she's made her bed and she'll have to lie in this. We have to go after them both. The first thing we have to do is find out who he is. This is the easy part. Let me make a couple of calls. Then we can talk. I just shrugged. Okay, but I don't know what you think I can do. She doesn't tell me anything about him. So what? We will find him and rot him like anyone else. And you know you can never get April back, right? What she did makes it impossible. She will never respect you again if you agree with what she does. No way, dude. Now she is another man's toy. I was surprised for a second, but then a slight smile appeared on my face. You are right. She is no longer my loving wife. Last night I learned how quickly love can turn to hate, and my hatred for her today is stronger than my love for her last night. She took it from me and turned it into something that would come back to hurt her. I told her about this. We talked a little more then. Finishing work without any overtime. We went to a small bar not far from work. None of us planned to get drunk. This was a business and plans had to be made. Clyde called a few more people, and we sat down and made a plan. I was amazed at the support I received from my friends. They didn't ask any questions. They just wanted to know how they could help. Together, we came up with a workable plan. At 7 that evening, I pulled into my driveway and walked into my house. Funny, I thought as I entered. This was no longer my home. It was just a home. I walked into the kitchen, took off my jacket, and walked into the living room. There I saw April sitting in her chair, watching Chris and Charlie, our 5-year-old twins, playing a video game. I stood there with that picture forever etched in my mind. I looked at April. She watched me while I looked at the children. There was a slight smile on her face, a smile that I now understand. This showed her contempt for me and her contempt for this whole family idol. It was all a lie, a huge lie, with her as the liar. Now I could see and understand. I answered her with a contemptuous look, but not a smile. When I turned away, she looked down. I went into the kitchen and looked into the refrigerator. I grabbed what looked like leftover fried chicken and mashed potatoes and put them in the microwave to reheat. I wasn't hungry, but I needed something to do. I had planned to talk to the boys before they went to bed, but Clyde talked me out of it. I had to put it aside for now, but when I talk to them, it will be the first step in the battle that began in April. I would have lost, no doubt, but I would have died fighting. I sat down with my plate and began to eat slowly. Nothing tastes good, but it was necessary to maintain my strength. I needed to collect my thoughts. I had eaten about half of it when April came in and sat down across from me. I glanced at her but returned to my plate and continued to eat methodically, chewing slowly. I said nothing. I had nothing to say to her yet. "Have you calmed down after last night? Now can we talk like civilized adults?" I looked at her in surprise. Civilized adults? How about a cheating slut and her cuckold husband? It was more realistic. Instead, I decided not to say anything. "Aren't you going to talk to me now? Are you going to act childish and keep quiet with me? I thought better of you, Chris. We must think about the children now, so you must remember your place in this house as their father." Am I really their father? Now this makes me wonder. Maybe I should check this with some tests. No more. No anger. Just a simple statement. April's face darkened with anger, and she was about to say something when I simply continued, "Be careful, April. Children will hear you if you start screaming. Do you remember the children? The ones you accused me of forgetting last night when I got angry? Well, now you have to remember. You have to think about what you've done to their world. Not only did you have fun with another guy, you ruined our entire family. Think carefully, April." April stopped, lowered her voice, and hissed, "You didn't seem to think much about what I said last night. I expected you to overcome this and return to your normal life. Nothing will change here at home. I still love you and you are my husband. That hasn't changed. Neither you nor the children will be deprived of a single familiar thing. I keep my activities a secret and only do my business when they are at school and you are at work. You don't have anything to lose as I am always here for you." I didn't answer. I just kept eating, chewing slowly and methodically. I kept a straight face and did not react in any way. My eyes were empty when I looked at her. When I did this, I didn't feel anything inside. Interestingly, my words meant nothing, but my eyes told her everything. It started to slowly sink into April as she sat there. For the first time, I saw a slight shiver of fear run through her body. "What are you going to do? Are you going to make things difficult for me?" "I was hoping that you loved me enough to let me have this time to myself. I told you last night that he didn't take anything from you and that I will always be there for you. Why can't you understand this?" April was now getting emotional while I just stared at her while slowly chewing my food. Finally, I swallowed and said, "I think you should wait to discuss this until the kids go to bed. I listened to you last night when you spoke. I didn't like it, but I listened. Now I will not have this discussion while the children are still awake." April seemed to calm down at this and started smiling again. "Thank you for this. I think you were right about some of what you said, but you hurt me with your words. I'll take the boys upstairs soon and then we can talk." She walked past me, placing her hand on my shoulder, I flinched at her touch and she pulled her hand away. I couldn't suppress the disgust I felt from that simple touch. I was with the kids and tried to be myself. It was hard knowing that everything would change, but I've accepted that April's actions ruined it all for me. Maybe I should just be a good cuckold and accept her terms. Wait until she finishes with another man. After all, didn't she say she still loved me and wanted to stay married to me? But I knew I couldn't do it. Not now. Not ever again. It was after 9 when April walked into the room where I was sitting. She sighed heavily, sank into a chair, and smiled. I put them to bed, and they fell asleep. Now they are almost too big to put to bed. They say they are going to bed, but I know they turn on the light after I leave and read. They are good boys. I looked at her and nodded my head in agreement. They are good children. It's a shame that it will be so hard for them, but I don't know how to relieve them of the pain they have to go through. What do you mean? I thought you realized that there is no need to change anything. Just give me what I want, and then we can go back to being the same family we were. Just be patient. I told you it would all be over soon. You won't lose anything. I love you so much and want to remain your wife. It's just something I have to do. Nothing more. I looked at this woman who had been my wife for the past 8 years. I married her because I couldn't imagine my life without her. We had 2 wonderful children and a good marriage until last night. Now everything had changed, and she couldn't understand why I felt it was necessary. Well, I wasn't going to go into detail tonight, but I needed to be clear. April, I listened to you last night. You said what you wanted. You said that you love me and want to be my wife. You say he doesn't take anything from me. You don't tell me who he is because you say it's none of my business. And you told me what would happen if I tried to divorce you. You made it very clear that you will take everything from me without any remorse, as you said. You threatened to take everything from me, including my boys. You made this very clear. April listened, but she had a look of anger on her face. She was not happy with my presentation of her words, whatever they were. It sounded different coming from me, but she saw the truth in what I said. I see that you don't see it the way I do, Chris. I told you that this had nothing to do with our marriage, but you didn't listen. Why can't you believe me when I say I still love you and want our marriage to continue? What I heard from you last night, April, was contempt. Contempt for me and our marriage. When I got angry, you responded with threats. Threats that you had thought through before you spoke to me. Contempt for me, for everything I have done for us over the years. You humiliate me, denigrate me, threaten me, and accuse me of misunderstanding. You knew perfectly well that I would react exactly the way I did. Why do you think you have already decided what to do with me? Why did you think that you had ready answers to all questions? Now I was starting to get angry. Until now I had been calm and in control, but it was gradually slipping away. April's angry face made me furious. I concluded, one thing you forgot last night, April, when you threatened and backed me into a corner that you didn't think I could find a way out of. I told you then, and I will remind you now, even a rat will fight a cat when it is backed into a corner and has nothing to lose. With these words, I stood up and walked away. As I approached the kitchen door where April was sitting, I stopped. I'm going to stop somewhere else for the night for a while. I'll come home after work so the kids won't notice anything right away. What do you mean you're staying somewhere else? Why don't you stay here? We can't solve this problem if you leave. Chris, do not do that. I really love you and don't want to lose you. I don't know what I will do if you leave me. Please, Chris, let's try to sort this out. There must be some way to make this work. I'm sorry, April. The only thing I know now is that I don't love you anymore. You succeeded in your infidelity and killed all my love for you last night. This is the only thing I know for sure. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I know for sure there's no turning back now. Chris, what about your vows to love and cherish me? Have you forgotten them? I also remember your vows to me. You swore on our wedding day to give up everyone else, but you didn't. You promised to love only me, but you gave another man what we shared. I cared for you, loved you, kept our marriage vows, and gave you everything I had. It wasn't enough. You gave what was mine to someone else. You gave it away and destroyed my love in the process. So, yes, I can move on from this. You destroyed my love for you to pieces. I can leave, and I will leave. I got out and went to Clyde's house. He agreed to let me stay there as long as I wanted. I needed some time to finish what we started. Soon it will all be over and I will start my new life. Over the next few days, I worked and spent time in the evenings with my children, but I didn't say anything else to April. She tried to talk to me several times, but each time I walked away from the conversation. One day she yelled at me, but I just grabbed my keys and left without saying a word. At work, during a break, one of the gang members came by to tell Clyde that everything was ready and they should have something in a few days. All we had to do now was wait. Just be patient. Nothing changed until the next week. Every evening I returned home to an increasingly nervous April. The kids didn't seem to notice anything special, but Charlie asked if I was working hard. When I asked him what he meant, he said he only saw his dad for a short time in the evenings. I assured him that we would figure something out this weekend. Charlie seemed to accept this, and the minor crisis was over. April kept asking me questions, but now I just ignored her and left as soon as she took the kids upstairs to put them to bed. When she came down, I was no longer there. It was the end of the week when Clyde walked into the break room and sat down. He handed me a folder. I looked questioningly at Clyde, but he just shook his head. I opened the folder and read the short report. It was 2 sheets of paper with one name at the top of each page, Carl Cummings. That was his name, and he was a junior attorney in the law office of Lincoln, Rice & Holmes. He was 24, almost 10 years younger than me, and single. His wife divorced him over 2 years ago, and he must have had money. He lived in a condominium, and April had been there twice this week. She came during the day and stayed for an hour or longer each time. So now I had a name and address. Now I knew who this man was, and I knew something about him. What I didn't know was that April saw something in him that she didn't see in me. What did he have that was worth giving up marriage for? But now it wasn't my problem. This would have been the case if she had come to me earlier and told me about this matter, but not as a fact that I had to accept without question. Okay, so what now? What do I need to do to set this in motion? I looked at Clyde for advice. Clyde seemed to be the one in charge, even though I was the one with the problem. I was lucky to have friends and a brother like Clyde. It seemed like being a good guy and working hard at my job was enough for my true friends, and now I needed them more than ever. Everything is already in motion. The first lesson is due this evening. I'll call you at home when everything is ready. Just make sure you have your cell phone with you. As soon as I call, you can let her know and end this crap. Fine. The knowledge that this would be done did not bring any satisfaction. This was not the way I wanted to do it, but April and her lover had me cornered, and now I was fighting the only way I knew how. I wasn't a lawyer or a doctor or anyone rich enough to come up with a complicated plan. I was a mechanic, someone who worked hard with his hands, someone who did the best he could for his family the only way he knew how. Hard, honest work, pride in his ability to provide for those he loved. And I loved April with all my heart. But my wife was not satisfied with this. Well, so be it. My plan suited my world, and she would see it very soon. I went home as usual and sat with my family at dinner as if nothing had happened. April chatted with the kids, and I answered when they asked me questions and actually initiated some discussions. I was nervous, but I didn't show it. After dinner, I spent time with the kids, actually playing some video games with them and helping them with their homework. Typical husband and father. April finished washing the dishes and came in to look. Tonight she seemed more relaxed as I looked more like my old self. She was starting to think that everything would be fine. While I was playing video games with my boys, Carl Cummings was just leaving his office building, heading to his car to drive to his apartment on the other side of town. He thought to himself how wild April had been when they met 2 days ago at his apartment. She longed for him. This was the first time she agreed to please him below the belt. When he asked her what the occasion was after they showeried, she said her husband found out. He was shocked, but she told him not to worry. Strange, he thought. Knowing that her husband knew what she was doing made her even more of a slut. Best sex for him, so he didn't care. As he passed the alley on the way to the parking lot where he had parked, he felt a jolt and, staggering, began to fall sideways. As he balanced, trying not to fall, someone grabbed his arms and pulled him along. He was dragged along the alley towards the courtyard at the end. He was pressed against the wall of the building and held by two men, one on each side. He tried to make out their faces, but they were wearing black ski masks. However, both were big, and he began to be afraid. He didn't have a lot of money on him, and he didn't wear an expensive watch, so what the hell did they need? A third man stood in front of him, also wearing a ski mask and gloves. He put one huge hand under Carl's chin and lifted his face. A rough voice asked, "You know a woman named April Phillips, asshole." Hearing this name, Carl suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Oh, shit. Jesus Christ. So that's what it's all about. Her fucking husband? She never told him he was so big. Shit. No, I don't know anyone with that name. He was shaking, but he had to try to deny everything. The big man hit him in the ribs, causing such severe pain that he lost his breath. He saw the stars circling in front of him. The pain was severe and frightened him greatly. I'll ask you again. You know a woman named April Phillips, asshole? The lie didn't work, so Carl didn't deny it anymore. Yes, I know her. Please, God, let me get out of here alive, he thought. You will never see or speak to her again. Do you understand me? The big man was waiting for his answer. I understand you. Okay, maybe it was just a warning. Okay, he could accept that. I want to be sure that you understand this exactly. My friends and I are not sure that a brat like you who seduces other people's wives is very smart. So we're going to make sure you really understand. With these words, they stopped pressing him against the wall. As he tried to regain his balance, the first blow kicked him in the crotch and he doubled over. However, he was not allowed to fall, and the next blow landed in the ribs. He felt a click and realized that the rib was broken. The next blow broke his jaw, and the pain nearly knocked him off his feet. He felt the next few blows between his legs, but after that, fortunately, he lost consciousness. They must have kept hitting him until they finally stopped. They brought him back to consciousness and told him that they wanted him to remember a few words. They repeated this over and over again. He didn't remember anything else until he woke up in the emergency room at Memorial Hospital. His injuries were not life-threatening, but he was admitted to the general care unit at the hospital. He was heavily pumped up on painkillers and in severe pain. He said a little prayer for being alive. They told him that she would probably call him and told him exactly what he should have told her. He clearly remembered the words he had to say to her. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Phillips. It was my mistake, and I regret it. I will never see or speak to you again. I will have no contact with you or your children. I'm sorry I ever met you. Goodbye. Carl leaned back on the bed and waited for her call. He repeated these words over and over in his head so as not to make a mistake. They told him that if anything didn't go the way they wanted, they would know about it, and he would pay double. He repeated them to himself again, just to be sure. He told himself that he would never hit on a married woman again, no matter who she was. My cell phone rang just after 8 p.m. while I was playing with the twins, and I excused myself to take it in the other room. I accepted the call when I saw Clyde's caller ID on the display. I listened to a simple message. It's done. Lesson 1 completed. He was admitted to the hospital. Then the phone went off. I put the phone away and returned to the living room with a smile on my face. April noticed this but didn't say anything. However, she smiled, thinking it was good news. Finally, April took the kids upstairs and looked at me questioningly. I said, I'll be here when you come down. She smiled widely and then stood up to put the children down. I went into the living room, sat in his chair and waited. Now it has begun. Pay. April came in with a coffee pot and 2 cups. I think we could talk a little more. You seem more resigned to the way things are. I am so glad. I was afraid that I would lose you, and it would break my heart. I know you don't believe me, but I love you so much. I can't lose you, not over something like this. It's so trivial compared to what we have. You should know this. I watched her while she spoke. She was still beautiful to me. After all, this was the woman I had loved for so long. I planned to spend the rest of my life with her. Growing old together. Plans, dreams, now everything is in dust. Well, let the end begin now. April, I have something to tell you, and I want you to listen to me very carefully. I know your lover's name is Carl Cummings, and he's a junior associate at Lincoln, Rice and Holmes. I know everything about him, and I know that you saw him twice this week. April was surprised and seemed about to say something, but I waved her to shut up. That's the problem. You threatened me with divorce. When I expressed my anger, you threatened to take away everything I have. I remember your words exactly. They are burned into my brain. You said, "I'll take everything you have." You said more, but those were the words I remembered. These were words of contempt that destroyed our marriage. These were the words that should have driven me into that corner where I had no choice but to let you have sex with another man while I stood by and watched. I told you the next night that cornered rats fight back. Now I saw the first signs of fear and pain on her face. She had no idea what was in store for her, but she was smart enough to know that it wouldn't be something she liked. Her shoulders rose and her head ducked in instinctive defense. I know you told Robin that I never made you feel the way you felt with him and that you were his slut. I'm not sorry that this has to end in a way you won't like, but Mr. Cummings has been told in no uncertain terms that his time with you is over. He will never see you again, or have sex with you. Never. He was also instructed that he was never to talk to my boys. He agreed. I watched the shock and disbelief on her face as I continued. I will file for divorce, but there will be no alimony for you. I am filing on the grounds of infidelity. There will be child support. My sons will want for nothing. As long as you take care of them, I will make sure you have the means. However, you will have to work if you want something for yourself. I will fill out all the documents, and you will be served. April stood up, anger burning on her face. You're crazy if you think I'll agree to this. And I'll take you to the cleaners, just like I told you. Just wait and see. April was scared, but still belligerent. She was going to bluff until the end, just like she had planned. Why don't you call your Mr. Cummings right now? Let's see what he says. Oh, wait. I think you might have to call the hospital. That call I received earlier told me he was in the emergency room at Memorial. I assume it has already been accepted by now. Just call him on his cell phone to find out. You can use mine. I already have his number. Susan looked at me in horror. What have you done? What did you do to Carl? Oh my God. Chris, what did you do? Why, April, are you even asking me? I've been here at home with you all evening, and I was at work earlier, so I couldn't do anything to anyone. Why do you think I did something? Why on earth would I do anything to your lover? You made it clear to me that I should stay away from this. This doesn't concern me. I had an expression on my face that was sure to frighten April. She's never seen me like this. I was a calm, meek person who never hurt anyone. I could never even physically discipline the children and leave it to her. Now she saw me differently. My face was cold and hard, and my eyes were dead. April came into the next room and I heard her talking on the phone. She must have been shocked because she came back with tears in her eyes. She fell into a chair and stared into space. I sat down calmly and took the newspaper. I knew what she heard on the phone. Her lover was in the process of leaving her. It was either this or suffer a beating every time he saw her. That was the promise made to him by the 3 very large men who picked him up as he was leaving work today. They explained to him exactly why he was being picked on and what he should expect if he ever saw or spoke to April again. They wanted to be sure he understood. April wiped away her tears, took a deep breath, looked at me and said, "Well, it looks like you won. Carl told me he never wanted to see me again. He said that all my things would be sent back to me. He never wants to talk to me again. Well then, I guess you have nothing to worry about. I have a lawyer, so he will sort everything out. Everything must end very quickly." I put the newspaper down and got up to leave. I'll talk to the boys this weekend and let them know why we're getting a divorce. Maybe they're old enough to understand. If not, they will grow up and remember. As I was leaving, I looked back and saw April sobbing. If I remember your words correctly, April, you said that your romance is something that will pass quickly and then everything can return to normal. I laughed, a bitter, evil laugh. You're still young and beautiful, April. Maybe you can find someone who will put up with your sick fantasies. Someone who wants an open marriage. Someone who will let you have fun with as many men as you want. I couldn't be like that, but that was just me. Good luck. Children don't understand this, but we understand. Adults have to live with the consequences of their actions. The consequences suck. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.